live from the WQAQ studio at Quinnipiac University. You're listening to Infinite Sports Radio on this Tuesday evening. I thank you for joining us. As always, I am your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, along with my co-host, Ben Upson, and we are so happy for you to tune in and listen to us for the next 2 hours as we babble about sports and whatnot. Ben, how are you doing tonight?
Kenny, it's been a nice day, self-care day as they're calling it here at the university.
Yeah, that's right.
So, it's been a day of work, though, for me, no matter what, because, we just get assignments still, and they're like, self-care day, take it off, but stuff's due tomorrow, so, all right, cool. No, other than that, though, we're in the midst of Champ Week. Quinnipiac is down 24 to Iona in the final seconds. They're going to be one and done in the MAC tournament this year, and, it's March, baby.
Yeah, it's not a happy time for Quinnipiac men's basketball.
No, it's not.
We thought they were gaining some momentum going into the MAC tournament, winning a couple of games down the stretch. But it looks like it appears they are going to be one and done, and Iona will be moving on in the MAC tournament. But before we get to men's basketball later on in the show, because I think we will touch upon that, because I know Ben was itching to discuss about it last week, and he only got about 5 minutes of it. So we'll try to squeeze that in. But there's we got a jam-packed show tonight. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. A lot of NFL stuff as usual. We always try to get the NFL stuff in, even when, like I said, even when the season is over, we still talk about NFL. Some baseball news. Zach Britton is undergoing surgery, so he might possibly miss the start of the season for the Yankees. So here we go. Some basketball stuff I think we'll touch upon, some hockey. We just got a lot of stuff to get into, but we will start off with talking about the Dallas Cowboys. Starting quarterback Dak Prescott has gotten paid. He signed a 4-year, $160 million deal to stay with the Dallas Cowboys, including $126 million guaranteed. And this includes a no-trade clause and a no-tag provision. Now, what do I think about this deal? Listen, I think Dak Prescott was a popular topic on this show, during football season, and obviously he disappeared when his horrific leg injury happened against the Giants in, I believe it was week 6, I want to say. Week 4, something. Week 4, week 6, between that time period. But it was a gruesome injury. Was out the rest of the year. The Cowboys they had to go to Andy Dalton for the rest of the season, and believe it or not, had a shot at winning the division in Week 17. But the Giants, shut that down, and then we all know what happened on Sunday night when the Washington football team and the Eagles played. And all that Doug Peterson stuff. But, that's a thing of the past. But, listen, I think Dak Prescott, for me, is an average quarterback. I've said that ever since he's been in the league. I think that in 2016, he was inherited a good, not just good, but a great offensive line. That's definitely not what it used to be. And I think the Cowboys are definitely going to have to address that in the offseason and through the draft. Guys like Travis Frederick, the center, retired. Guys like Doug Free and Ronald Leary. One of their draft choices in 2015, La'el Collins, he's been, suffering some injuries, so he hasn't really been on the field. So really all they have is Zach Martin, and Tyron Smith is, he's been in and out of the lineup. He hasn't really played that many games in the last couple of years. With a lot of, I think, neck injuries and back problems. So he hasn't really done much. So the Cowboys are definitely going to have to address the offensive line. So in 2016, they had the great offensive line. They drafted Ezekiel Elliott. You had guys like Jason Witten and Terrence Williams and Des Bryant who were all there. The defense definitely was a lot to be desired. It wasn't as bad as it was this past season. And the Cowboys, they went 13-3, and Dak Prescott won Offensive Rookie of the Year and took the starting job away from Tony Romo, and I think he deserved that. And then the following season was having a productive season, and then Ezekiel Elliott had that suspension that was looming throughout the season, and then eventually the suspension caught up to Zeke, and he had to sit out for a couple of games, and Dak Prescott was one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL when that happened. He looked really bad without the services of Ezekiel Elliott, and I think he definitely got exposed that year. Then 2018 comes around. They don't have a number one wide receiver. They're throwing to guys like Tavon Austin and Deontay Thompson, and Michael Gallup was just a rookie that year. So they really didn't have anybody. So then they traded for Amari Cooper, and the Cowboys basically were pretty good in the second half of the 2018 season, and they made it to the playoffs. They beat a kind of a reshaping, a different Seahawks team, a rebuilding Seahawks team, I guess. They beat them in the wild card round. Then they go up against the Rams, who eventually would go on to the Super Bowl. So they were bounced out in the second round. And then 2019, Dak Prescott has a good year offensively, but the Cowboys they go 8-8. And they don't win the division. They lose to the Eagles in Week 16, and they miss the playoffs. And then 2020. Dak honestly got off to a good start, and then the injury happened, and that was the end of it. So Dak Prescott, his body of work, I think it's safe to say he's been a productive quarterback throughout his career, statistics-wise, and I think a lot of people will say that a lot of his stats, especially in 2019, came at garbage time. So, in 2019, he had great numbers when you just look at it. He threw for almost 5,000 yards, 30 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. And then this year, through the games that he played, had almost 2,000 yards, 9 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. And it was funny because for a couple of weeks, Dak Prescott had more passing yards than, a lot of guys that were still playing. He was still, one of the passing yards leaders after, I think it was, Week 6 was, the last week he was, a passing yards leader. Because the Cowboys were throwing for a bunch of yards. Because, you got to look back at the Atlanta game. That game when, Atlanta never should have blew that lead. But, Dak was throwing all over the place. In the Cleveland Browns game, throwing all over the place. Dak was putting up just ridiculous numbers. And then the injury happens. Now, I'll say this about Dak. Like I said, I think he's an average quarterback at best, but I don't think the Cowboys would have been as bad as they were without him. And I think that I don't think they would have been 6-10. I think they would have finished a little bit better than that. Now, by how much, though? Not that many, because to be fair, though, the Cowboys did play a little bit better down the stretch. They did kind of figure things out with Andy Dalton as the starter. But those couple of games that they played, when they got blown out by Washington, 25-3, whatever it was, there was a couple of stinkers in there. The Cardinals game when they lost, I think it was 31-10, 38-10, something like that. Yeah, it was pretty bad. But then they kind of figured it out. They won a big game against the Vikings. They got into a shootout with the 49ers, who were banged up the whole season. So, there were a couple of games where, the offense did kind of play a little bit better. They also stunk it up on Thanksgiving. Let's not forget that against Washington as well. And let's not forget Ben DiNucci. He started that one game at Philadelphia. That was a terrible game. But I think if Dak would have played the whole season, I think they definitely would have won a couple of those games. I don't think they would have gotten beaten as badly as they did against Washington. But you know what? I think that the Cowboys, I think they kind of screwed themselves by not... I think the injury definitely screwed over the Cowboys because... And just by their roster, too. The the way that they played in the games that Dak Prescott was injured, a lot of it, like I just mentioned, they were terrible. They were really bad, and I think that gave Dak leverage to get the money that he wanted. Because the Cowboys, if the Cowboys win the division somehow, because the division was terrible, if the Cowboys win the division, I don't think Dak gets this money. But now with this money and just some of the things I was looking at, with the players that they've paid, they paid Amari Cooper, they paid Ezekiel Elliott, they paid DeMarcus Lawrence, their defensive lineman. They're very top heavy. So are they going to be able to bring some of their other players back that eventually will hit the free agent market? Because, we could say Dak was putting up good numbers, but listen, I think the major problem with the Cowboys is their defense. And I think a lot of people will agree with that. They got to go defense in the draft. They got to get some more players because that defense was terrible. Marcus Lawrence is not living up to his contract. And, you got guys that are... Leighton Vander Esch couldn't stay on the field last season. Cowboys are not a good team right now. And, listening to a lot of these TV news outlets saying it's Super Bowl or bust. And, of course there's always expectations for the Cowboys because, they're America's team, quote unquote, which is ridiculous. It's very aggravating to hear Cowboy fans come out and say this is their year every single season. What I would say is, what are the Cowboys' odds to win the NFC? Who are they better? Like, where would you, when you take all the teams in the NFC, where would you rank them? They're not in the top 5. They're not maybe in the top 10, but if they're in the top 10, they're at the bottom. I mean, you look at the Super Bowl champs, the Buccaneers, you got to deal with them. Still got to deal with the Packers. The 49ers are going to be back next year. The Rams got Matthew Stafford. The Seahawks. The Cardinals destroyed you. I think they're going to be a good team next year. I think Washington and the Giants both have better defenses. They're up and coming. I think they're better than you. That's 8 teams right there. So, yeah, they get Dak back, but they still got a lot of work to do. And on top of that, I don't believe in Mike McCarthy. When he was on the market, before the Jets signed Adam Gase, I was an advocate for Mike McCarthy. I said the Jets should get Mike McCarthy. He's a Super Bowl champion. You could say whatever you want about Aaron Rodgers being the reason why they won that Super Bowl, and rightfully so. Mike McCarthy's a Super Bowl champion. He's been to the playoffs. Guy's a solid head coach. But this was at that time. Now, the way the Cowboys, some of the decision making, especially on Thanksgiving when they did that trick play, when they were punting late in the second half, they did that trick play deep in their own territory. They do that end around, and Washington reads that play perfectly, and they get the ball in good field position. And I believe Antonio Gibson, their running back for Washington, scores a touchdown like right after that. Some of Mike McCarthy's play calling is dreadful. And that was kind of the reason why he got fired in Green Bay. And listen, Green Bay, albeit, yes, they lost both of them, but they went 13-3 in back-to-back seasons and made it to the NFC Championship twice. They made the right decision by getting rid of Mike McCarthy. And Mike McCarthy, this is a big year for him. You bring in Dan Quinn to be the defensive coordinator, and he was the defensive coordinator when the Legion of Boom was a thing all those years ago with Richard Sherman and Earl Thomas and Brandon Browner and Cam Chancellor. And listen, they got some players on defense for Dallas. There's no question about that. Leighton Vander Esch, if he stays healthy, Jalen Smith, the cornerback Diggs that they drafted last season in last year's draft. They got some guys there, but they need more. The Cowboys right now are still no threat in the NFC. They're not. Now, Dak might have a good season next year, and we hope that he's healthy. I think the rehab process has gone well, and it doesn't seem like he's had any setbacks. So I think Dak's going to have a good statistical season, but is it going to be a bunch of garbage touchdowns that he's going to be throwing for and garbage yards? I mean, we saw Ben Roethlisberger in the playoff throw for 500 yards, but that was all in garbage time. I don't think the Cowboys are going to be a good team next year. I don't. Now, we got to see how free agency goes. Free agency's next week. The draft, if they have a good draft, they got a good free agency. They had some guys on defense. All right. But at this very moment, Dak Prescott getting paid does not make the Cowboys an NFC contender. I don't think so. But good for him. He got his money. He got what he wanted. Now, as I tweeted, now go out and win some big games. Because you really haven't won a lot of big games, period, since you entered the league. Yeah, you could say you came back from 21-3 against Aaron Rodgers in the divisional round. Yeah, you still lost the game. You were the number 1 seed. You were at home. You had probably the best running back in football at the time. And you couldn't get it done. And then you lose to the Rams. And then you don't make the playoff. You lose to the Rams in 2018. You don't even make the playoffs in 17 and 19. And you looked like one of the worst quarterbacks in the league in 2017 when Zeke was suspended. You had Alfred Morris running the football at the time, who was on the Giants this past season. Go out there and win some big games. If we're 2-3 years into this deal, and Cowboys aren't doing anything, they might start looking for other options. So we'll see what happens. Dak Prescott already got paid. Already got paid. Finally got paid. And, go out and do it, Dak.
Kenny, what you've just talked about for about the last 12 to 14 minutes was super insightful and spot on, my friend. Some very good analysis there on what's happened here in Dallas. And, look, under Dak Prescott, the Cowboys have won 2 NFC East titles. They've lost in the divisional round to the Packers 34-31 back in the 2016 season. We all know that as the Jared Cook game. And then
Jared Cook is a free agent, by the way. So, Packers.
Good bit of news there. Good bit of news there, too. And then in 2018, also won the East that year at 10-6. Won a close one in the wild card round against the Seahawks before going out at the Rams. So, and then the other 3 seasons, 9-7, 8-8, 6-10, all missed the playoffs. And in general, this contract extension now that the Cowboys have given Dak, 4 years, $160 million, it's too much. It's really too much. The only other player that is making this type of money in the league right now is Patrick Mahomes. What has he done with the Chiefs? How about 3 AFC West titles and 2 Super Bowl appearances and 1 title as well? Dak Prescott, 2 playoff appearances. Well, 3, actually, between 16 and 18. It's like you said, Kenny. The Cowboys can't go out right now and win big games. They never have, and they continue to fail every time they get the opportunity. And something's got to give here because Mike McCarthy is on a short leash. I think if the Cowboys somehow miss out on the playoffs again this season, which is possible, but now Dak he's the face of the franchise again. And you just paid him all this money. He's got to go out there and win these big games, or else it's not going to work out. And you look at his numbers. I mean, really, in 2016, I will admit, he had a pretty nice season. thrown for just under 3,700 yards, 67.8 completion percentage with 23 touchdowns, 4 picks. And 2018 as well. Another nice season. His career high in passing yards, or actually that was in the 2019 season, I should say. Threw for almost 5,000 yards that season with 30 touchdowns and 11 picks. Overall, the numbers, they look good. There's nothing overly impressive about them, and they're also not underwhelming either. And I would one-up you, Kenny, and say good instead of average. I think Dak Prescott's a little above average, but the one thing that we've stressed so far is that he just can't go out and win big playoff games right now. And like you mentioned, the NFC isn't going anywhere next year. The NFC is going to be perhaps the more competitive conference, as I think it was this year. Between Seattle, Green Bay, Tampa, the LA Rams, the Saints, and
I didn't even mention the Saints.
And the 49ers, really. I mean, who knows what's going to happen with the 49ers with a healthier defense. And I don't know what's going to go on with Jimmy Garoppolo. Is he going to get traded? What's going to happen out there? But they could be better. I can't see the Cowboys being a top 5 team in the NFC either next year. No way. And even with the expanded playoffs, maybe they sneak in just because they're in the weak NFC East. But like you said, Washington's got a nice defense that's developing. So do the Giants. The Eagles, I don't know what's going to happen with the Eagles. The Eagles are a mess right now, especially without Carson Wentz. I mean, look, I'm not trying to undermine Jalen Hurts, but he's got a big task in Philly next year, and it's going to be pretty tough, especially with now Nick Sirianni behind the helm. And as we saw in that introductory press conference, oh boy. So, yeah, I look at this deal overall with Dak, the extension, and I think they paid him too much. I understand, sure, he's your franchise quarterback, and who else is going to go out there and, play for the Cowboys right now? I mean, who could the Cowboys afford to get that's better than Dak Prescott? And like I said, Dak Prescott is a good quarterback, but this is too big of a deal. 4 years, $160 million is almost a Mahomes-like contract. And like you said, Kenny, he obviously got what he want. I'm sure he definitely fought for it because that's Dak. That's Dak. And clearly, they have a lot of faith in where he's going to be able to take this team, because if I'm Dallas right now, I'm not riding high going into this season again. I think this could be another 8-8, maybe 9-7 season with Dak. I just can't imagine that this team's going to, be able to string something together like we saw in the 2016 season. And the fact that they lost that game 2 to the Packers were still a great team that year, don't get me wrong, but that almost seemed like, maybe this was going to be the moment for the Cowboys, and it wasn't. So, but now there is a new contract for Dak Prescott. He deserves it. He does. Absolutely. It is a lot of money, though. And I just think it's too big of a risk. It's more of a risk than a reward for Dallas in the long run. We'll see what happens, especially with the NFC East being a vulnerable division. But for right now, I'm not a huge fan of this. And Mike McCarthy, like I have kept saying, he's got to get it together. If Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott aren't able to put together a playoff season for Dallas, it could be the end of Mike McCarthy after just 2 years. And I agree, Kenny. The Packers were right to get rid of him, and that theory is working out well right now. Oh, and I didn't even mention the Cowboys' defense this season. Absolutely atrocious. Absolutely atrocious. And you just take a look back at this schedule. I mean, you're giving up 34 points to the Giants week 5. You got embarrassed by the Cardinals on Monday night, week 6, 38-10. Then the next week at Washington, scoring just 3 points. Then 9 at the Eagles, week 8. I understand these games were without Dak Prescott, but it's still pretty embarrassing. It really is, especially that defense, because the defense gave up so many points per game. It wasn't even funny. 49 to the Browns, 41 to Washington on Thanksgiving, 34 to Baltimore week 13, and 33 to the 49ers in week 15. So the Cowboys defense is really what needs a lot of work too. Like, great. You gave Dak Prescott his money. That part's done. It took longer than we expected, too, I think. If Dallas was so intent on going after Dak again, I'm personally surprised that they didn't, go for him a couple weeks ago. What were they waiting for? Because, the deadline was drawing in, and the Cowboys were almost forced, to do something with Dak right now. But in the end, Dak gets paid. He's going to stay in Dallas, from the sounds of it, through at least the 2024 season. But Cowboys got to work some other things out here. Hopefully with a healthier offensive line and maybe getting some defensive players in the draft, it'll help them build up that defense. And I think that's all the Cowboys can hope for right now. So, like I said, too much money, too much of a risk. But in the end, I think it overall benefits that Dallas has at least somewhat of good quarterback.
Yeah, and I was, while you were giving your take on this, I was looking up some statistics. So one of the things that I was trying to look up, which I found, I don't know if these numbers are accurate, but Dak Prescott, in the games that he played without Ezekiel Elliott, 8 career games without Ezekiel Elliott, has a passer rating of 84.8 with 1,500 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. Now, when you look at a number like 84.8, if that's a number that you're using for like QBR, if you had an 84.8 QBR, that's really good.
Right.
An 84.8 passer rating without Ezekiel Elliott is terrible. It's terrible. His numbers without Ezekiel Elliott were awful.
And that right there just shows how crucial Zeke is to this Cowboys offense.
But I briefly mentioned Zeke, but looking at Zeke's numbers, his yards per game declined since his rookie season. Last year, well, again, the last year, this year, debate, whatever, that I went off on a couple weeks ago. So I'm just going to say, in 2020, his yards per game, Ezekiel Elliott, he played in 15 games. His yards per game was 65. His rookie season, yards per game was 108. He had 6 fumbles this past season, which tied his career high in, what was it, 2018 he had 6 fumbles. His rookie season he had 5. Still rushed for 979 yards. But you could tell Zeke is starting to decline a little bit, I think. Now,
yeah.
You see guys like Todd Gurley, guys like Adrian Peterson, a bunch of other guys. Le'Veon Bell, I think it's fair to say at this point, because that guy didn't play any snaps in the Super Bowl, I'm pretty sure. The running back position, you got to take advantage of the years that you have when you sign a running back, whether you draft a running back, and you got to take advantage of his prime years, because if you don't get to the promised land, you're going to be moving off of your running back pretty shortly, because running backs, they wear out pretty quickly. And that's one of the things that we're worried about, I would say, with Saquon Barkley, because, the guy's been injured the last couple of years now. Now he's going to be going into his 4th season already with the Giants. And guy's barely been on the field. You know, Ezekiel Elliott was 21 entering the league. He's 25 now. And it's pretty crazy. In 2017, you know, he was suspended. He only played 10 games in 2017. He still almost rushed for 1,000 yards, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's still really good.
Yeah, that's really good for 10 games. I mean, he was still very productive. He was still very productive in 2017. He was productive in 2018. He was productive in 2019. This year, not so much. Only had 6 rushing touchdowns, which ties his career low. In 2018, he had 6, but he rushed for 1,400 yards that year. He rushed for 1,600 yards in his rookie season. So, yeah, like, you know, the touchdowns might be lacking, but, you know, his yards for that season were very good. This is a big year for Zeke, too. I mean, if he's not productive, you know, do the Cowboys, you know, hand the reins off to Tony Pollard, who has shown flashes since he's been drafted. He was drafted in 2019. Had a couple of big runs, had that crazy run against the 49ers for a touchdown. You know, they might start, you know, giving him more carries and giving Zeke less carries. Because I got to tell you, Zeke was my first pick in one of my fantasy drafts. I think Zeke is going to become a second, third round running back. Now, you could say, well, Dak's coming back. Zeke's going to be better next year. And you know what? You might be right. But, again, the running back position, teams move off of you pretty quickly now. I mean, you know, everybody talks about Derrick Henry, and Derrick Henry is a monster. Got shut down in the wild card game against the Ravens. But, you know, if Derrick Henry shows any signs of wearing down, Titans can move off of him too. You get beat up. I mean, you're running in between the tackles. You're getting hit constantly. Yeah, it takes a toll on your body. So, I listen. I'm interested to see if the Cowboys can address the offensive line. You know, shore up a couple of spots. Dak is paid now. I mean, the receiving core on paper is fantastic. With Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup. That's a great receiving core.
It really makes you wonder how the Cowboys haven't had consecutive like playoff appearances with this roster.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's the defense.
That's true. And what do they say? Defense wins championships.
Yeah, and we saw that in this this past Super Bowl. You know, defense is really important. I mean, Dak,
which by the way, that was 5 weeks ago already.
Yeah, it's crazy. Time flies, and we're moving towards baseball. We're getting close to opening day. You know, so it's. I mean, we always say it. Time flies, but you know, honestly, as a Giant fan, I'm happy that the Cowboys paid Dak, because I really don't see the Cowboys right now. I listen. Maybe it's because I'm being cocky. I think the Giants are better than the Cowboys right now. I think the Giants are the best team in the division right now. I really do. I think this is the Giants' division to win next year, and we got to see what they do in free agency, what they do in the draft. Because if they got a good draft and a good free agency, and there's some guys out there that you know, the Giants could definitely bring in and make their team better. And there's, you know, some receivers in this upcoming draft that the Giants could definitely draft and give Daniel Jones some weapons. I think the Giants are the best team in the division right now. And speaking of the Giants, as we'll kind of move away from the Cowboys talk, the Giants signed Leonard Williams, their defensive lineman, to the franchise tag. So they are definitely going to look towards working on a long-term deal to keep him around. I mean, he was fantastic this past season, 11.5 sacks. He's only 26. He was a monster for this defensive line. And hopefully the Giants can bring in another pass rusher, whether it's on the market or in the draft, to pair with Leonard Williams, because I think that's one of the key things the Giants need to address is get another pass rusher. And it's kind of funny because I was just looking up Leonard Williams, and it's funny because the New York Post yesterday came out with an article that said why the Giants are unlikely to franchise tag Leonard Williams, and they ended up doing that today.
Today, yeah. And another player, too, that, really deserves it.
Yeah.
Leonard Williams has been a very nice addition to this Giants team ever since they, snagged him from the Jets. And at least in the latter half of last season, I think, I felt that he was definitely one of, the stronger defensive players up front for this team. And without a doubt, he's making his impact on this team for sure. And in a time where the Giants are still in a transition, trying to get these, younger guys acquainted with the team. And definitely, Kenny, if the Giants' defense is able, to string together some nice performances and Daniel Jones' improvement, this franchise tag on Leonard Williams might just work out in a very good way.
Yeah. A couple years ago when they got him, Dave Gettleman was bragging on, I think, Joe Beningo and Evan Roberts' show on WFAN. He was saying, "Yeah, what do you guys think? I got Leonard Williams," and they kind of laughed it off and said, "Yeah, thank God you took him off our hands." And it kind of looked like, at the time, I think a lot of people said, "Okay, I mean, is this really going to make a difference?" Last year, he broke out. 11 and a half sacks, 30 QB hits, 14 tackles for loss. And I think that's also a credit to Patrick Graham, the Giants' defensive coordinator, because probably one of our better defensive coordinators that the Giants have had in a long time. We had a couple years of going through James Betcher, and, no offense to Steve Spagnuolo, but he really didn't, other than 2016, which I think was just a fluky year. He definitely, the past was behind his better days were behind him.
Don't forget
when it came
Perry
to the
Fuel.
Giants. Yeah, Perry Fuel. Yeah, but towards the end of his tenure, it was pretty pathetic.
Yeah.
Especially 2013, that was a pretty pathetic season for the Giants defense. Remember, they were giving up 30 points a game. The first couple of games of the season, but. I think Leonard Williams has definitely panned out, and I'm really happy that they brought him back because, if we just let him walk after, the statistics that I just read, that's another reason to just fire Dave Gettleman. But this was very important. I think this was great for the Giants to be able to bring him back. And like we said, he's only 26. So, still got a whole career ahead of him. So Giants are only going to get better. And this is definitely a move that needed to be made and was made. And let's see what they do in free agency. And kind of looking around the league, some of the other franchise tags. So the Jets, they franchise tagged their safety Marcus May. The Redskins franchise tagged their left guard, Brandon Sheriff. The Panthers franchise tagged their offensive tackle, Taylor Moton, if I pronounced that correctly.
Probably Wooten. I think Taylor Wooten.
Wooten, whatever. I'm not good with pronouncing names. The Buccaneers, they assigned their franchise tag to Chris Godwin, their wide receiver, so that's huge for them. So that's just kind of some of the franchise tags that we've seen so far. Also, the Broncos franchise tagged their safety, Justin Simmons. Also, quick thing with the Giants, they also released Golden Tate. I think we knew that was going to happen. Really did not have a role in this team. That was kind of one of those deals that Dave Gettleman made. That was pretty. That was a bad move. Now, Golden Tate, nice player. Had that little skirmish with Jalen Ramsey, which was kind of annoying. But, he apologized for it. Just really did not have a role on the team. And, again, another slot guy. And, we have Sterling Shepard, so it was just kind of weird to bring Golden Tate in. He just really didn't have a role in this team, like I said. Oh, yeah, also Allen Robinson, wide receiver for the Bears, was franchise tagged. Players that were not franchise tagged was Kenny Golladay, wide receiver for the Detroit Lions. He'll be a free agent. The Packers, they didn't assign the franchise tag to Aaron Jones. They're looking for a multi-year deal with him before free agency starts on Monday. Hopefully they do that because, the Packers have him and Jamal Williams as free agents. And, those are good running backs for the Packers, and they're only going to have A.J. Dillon then. And then other stuff around the league. Vikings released their kicker, Dan Bailey. Titans released their cornerback, Malcolm Butler, who I think the Giants should go after because they need a number 2 corner.
Absolutely.
And the Buccaneers, they re-signed Levante David to a 2-year deal. So I think we talked about it last week about the Buccaneers. And also the Patriots acquired left tackle from the Oakland Raiders, or Vegas Raiders, sorry. Trent Brown, who was on the team in 2018, and they won the Super Bowl. The Levante David thing, it was funny because, watching Undisputed like I do, Shannon Sharp was insisting that the Bucs were not going to be able to bring their 3 big guys back, Levante David, Chris Godwin, and Shaq Barrett. Well, they got 2 of the 3. Now, Shaq Barrett's going to be the tough one because he's definitely going to want to be paid a lot of money. And personally for me, I don't know if the Buccaneers are going to be able to retain him. I don't think they will. But you never know. But for the Buccaneers, they still got their core together. It's going to be interesting though if they're going to bring back Gronk, if they're going to bring back AB. I think with Brady, as long as Brady's still there, I think they're going to still want to play with him. I think there were some rumors about Gronk maybe possibly going to Miami. I don't know, but I think that those guys are going to want to stay with Brady and
go for number 8, Tom Brady.
Yeah, but
haven't we gotten tired of hearing that?
Yeah. But you look at Shaq Barrett, 2019, had 19 and a half sacks. Had 8 sacks this past season. This guy's going to want to get paid. And that's what happens. These guys, they win Super Bowls and they got their ring, now they want to get paid. So come on over to the Giants. We need some pass rushers. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Giants should go after Kenny Golladay. And I think they should, like I said, I think they should go after Malcolm Butler. They need a receiver. They need a corner to, be opposite of James Bradbury. So we'll see what happens. But let me tell you, the NFL offseason is going to be crazy.
This is perhaps one of the most anticipated, in the last decade, probably. I mean, I can't remember an NFL offseason where there's been so much, quarterback drama, especially the whole Russell Wilson situation is just really interesting.
Yeah.
And now that we're just 8 days away from, the deadline for free agency to really begin, I mean, everything's going to go crazy, really. And I just picture if Russell Wilson ends up on, the Raiders or the Bears or the Saints. Obviously, the Cowboys would be off that list now since.
Thank God. I do not want Russ going to the Cowboys.
Oh, no. Please, no. That would have been terrible. But either way, I'm definitely looking forward to it too, Kenny, because there's going to be some crazy things going down.
Yeah, and listening to the Pat McAfee show, they were talking to an NFL insider or somebody. They said it's going to be a massacre when it comes to guys getting cut because of the salary cap hits that a lot of these teams are taking. Now, it was on Twitter, the Giants are going to have about $100 million in cap space next year. So if they don't make any big moves, unfortunately, we might have to wait till next year for that. Which, I mean, I'm going to look up right now how many, who has, the most cap space. I mean, I think I was trying to look it up, but, I mean, not a lot of teams have that much. But I guess that's probably why a lot of teams are going to be cutting a lot of their players to free up a lot of cap space.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Kenny, but, Big Ben is back with Pittsburgh. Now, didn't they work out a deal to get under the cap space?
I believe so. He definitely took a pay cut because he was not gonna play under the deal that he currently had.
Yeah, and honestly, I give kudos to Big Ben for doing that. I mean, I think Tom Brady did that up in New England, but it's not easy to really say, "Oh, I'll take a pay cut," for the team. It's not easy to say that by any means, and I just give Big Ben a lot of credit. That he's willing to, take that cut and still play for his team another year. And rightfully so, he should, come back for another year. I think the Steelers ended this last season with a really sour taste in their mouth, especially just the whole Cleveland game, that whole fiasco, giving up 28 points in the first half.
Yeah, that was really bad.
Yeah,
that was very bad.
It'll be good to see Big Ben back for another year, but that was just an example of the cap space.
Yeah, no, I think this is it. Just right now, the Jets have the most cap space among every team in the NFL. They have $69 million in cap space.
That's enough to get some big free agents.
Yeah, the Patriot, and then number 2 is the New England Patriots. So, Patriots are going to be wanting to make some moves. And then you look at the team with the least amount of cap space. You got the New Orleans Saints, who are $59 million over the cap.
Ooh.
And they released their longtime punter, Thomas Morstead.
Yeah, it felt like Thomas Morstead was there forever.
Yeah.
I think he was on the 2009 Super Bowl team, right?
I believe so.
Pretty sure he was. That was one of his first years in the league, I think.
I believe so, yeah. Yeah, they restructured Cameron Jordan's deal and DeMario Davis's deal. I mean, going into the offseason after the Super Bowl, they're almost $100 million over the cap. So they still got a lot of work they got to do. I mean, they cut Jared Cook and Josh Hill, like I briefly mentioned before. They're 2 tight ends, so I guess Adam Trotman is going to be the guy next year for them in New Orleans. Again, still no word on Drew Brees. There was a video that surfaced of him working out, so who knows what's going to happen with Drew Brees. But I was reading that he took a pay cut to the point where it was just a veteran's minimum. So odds are Drew Brees is probably not going to play next year. But who knows? Crazier things have happened. Maybe he's taking a pay cut because he's made so much money over his career. Maybe the bad taste in his mouth after losing to Brady in the playoffs. Maybe he's going to play under the veterans minimum. I don't know. I have no idea. I mean,
that situation's really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, now he's gone past the Peyton Manning day because, I looked up when Peyton Manning announced his retirement. That was March 7th. It's now March 9th.
The waiting continues. What's going to happen? I mean, like I said time and time again, I just can't see with the state of, Drew Brees, his lack of arm strength now. I mean, the guy's 42. We saw all the time this past season that he was throwing checkdowns. A lot more checkdowns than down the field. That's going to be an issue. And you can't, even though Alvin Kamara is definitely one of the elite running backs in the league right now, you can't guarantee that, he's going to go off for like 100-plus yards every single time. I mean, there's a good chance that, he finishes with 10 games with 100 or more rushing yards, absolutely. But you just can't bank on it every game. And as sad as I would hate to see, Drew Brees go out like he did against the Bucs, throwing 3 picks in that game and just killing all the momentum that the Saints really did have in that first half. It was sad to see him go like that if that was his last game. But unfortunately, Kenny, I think you and I both realized that the Saints I don't think they can continue with him for another year. I just don't think.
I don't think so.
I just don't think it's in the best decision right now for the organization.
I really think that Jameis Winston is going to be the starter next year for the Saints if it's not Drew Brees. I think Taysom Hill still has a role on this team next season, but I think that Jameis Winston is the more experienced option. I think that under Sean Payton, I think he's going to cut down on the turnovers. The thing I worry about with the Saints now is who else are they going to have to get rid of? Because if you got to start moving off of guys like Latavius Murray and, getting rid of some of the guys in the secondary, maybe people on the defensive line. Well, I did say that Cameron Jordan could be somebody that they get rid of, possibly, but they restructured his deal, and I remember I briefly mentioned, he's one of the faces of the team, so I don't know if necessarily they would move on from him. It doesn't seem like that now that he restructured his deal. Who knows? I think they might move off of Emmanuel Sanders. I think he might be a guy that possibly could be moved because, they are $59 million over the cap. They still got to get rid of some guys. Well, not necessarily get rid of some guys at the moment, but they're going to have to, cut some guys' salaries. And, yeah, basically get rid of people. So, they're talk about cap hell. They are
in the midst of that.
Yeah, they are in a world of trouble right now. And kind of one of the other things, another QB situation, is the Patriots. What do you think the Patriots are going to do with their quarterback situation?
Yeah, that's interesting because obviously a lot of talk that Cam Newton's not coming back, and I think it's definitely what's going to end up happening. But, I've heard Jimmy Garoppolo circulating in trade talks, going back to the Patriots in a team which he never should have left, in my opinion. The Patriots decided to get rid of him, and that just doesn't that didn't seem like the right move. Because look what he did out in San Fran these last couple of seasons. He's been good, nothing super special, but I think he definitely would have perhaps been a better option once Tom Brady decided to get out of New England. But honestly, I don't know. It's such a weird situation. I would like to think that, Bill Belichick has something in mind that doesn't feature Cam Newton, though, because there's no way I think that, the Patriots can go on with him. It just doesn't seem like an ideal situation right now. So, and now, like I said before, that once Tom Brady left this team, Bill Belichick's flaws got exposed. And his drafting has not been necessarily good, throughout Brady's time in New England. But it's been covered up by the great play of Tom Brady and the offense. And the Patriots' defense as well has seen some better years. They're not as good as they once were. So there's quite a few pieces on this team outside of the quarterback position that need to get worked on. And if if the Patriots aren't careful, they might head into a stretch here where they could have a couple sub 500 seasons coming up. I think it might very well happen if they're not able, to make some moves here. Bill Belichick's really got to step up his game here. And obviously, seeing Tom Brady go down to Tampa and, get that title in his first year, he's got to be kicking himself. I mean, seriously. The fact that whole situation played out like it did, Bill Belichick has definitely stayed away from the public eye. He doesn't want to hear anything about it right now. But he can change the culture, I think, in the Patriots. And if he makes some good moves, the Patriots can get back to their winning ways and maybe find a path back to the playoffs. But anyways, Kenny, with the whole quarterback situation, I would like to think that Jimmy Garoppolo is going to come back. Those talks sound...
come back to New England or come back as the 49ers starter?
No, I think he might potentially, come back to New England. I think it's open. The door's open for that to happen. There's been, some developing talks about it. So, I mean, if you're Belichick and the Patriots, I think you got to consider putting an offer out there for him. Because, what can it hurt you?
Yeah.
I think it's a better option than Cam Newton, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah, I think so. I think that, if you look at the 49ers record without Jimmy Garoppolo, it's terrible.
Yeah.
He started the last, 6 or 7 games with the Niners back in 2017, and he went 5-0. He went 1-1 to start 2018, and then he tore his ACL in Week 3 against the Chiefs. Last year, they went 13-3 with Garoppolo. And then this year they finished 6-10. I think they won a couple games, but with Garoppolo, they're a better team. As much as people say he benefits from the talent around him, they don't win when he doesn't start.
Oh, for sure.
So,
Nick Mullins is not the answer.
No, or C.J. Beathard.
Answer.
I think C.J. Beathard should be the backup. He definitely played better than Mullins in the games that he did play in. C.J. Beathard. I think Garoppolo. I think this is it for him. I think that he's going to be the starter this season for the Niners. But if they don't do anything, if he doesn't take the next step and turn back into that quarterback that we saw, in 2017, going 5-0 as a starter, I think the 49ers move off of him and go in a different direction. But for the Patriots, they got some familiar faces out on the market. They obviously bring back Trent Brown, who was their left tackle when they won in 2018. Malcolm Butler's out there, so maybe they might want to, bring him back because it seems like they're going to be moving off of Stephon Gilmore, so they're going to need a corner. And another familiar face that was on the chopping block, which was kind of a surprise for a lot of people, was Kyle Van Noy, who the Miami Dolphins released. Having a nice season with the Dolphins too, and they cut him. Maybe the Patriots potentially bring him back to strengthen that defense. And the Patriots got some guys that are coming back from opting out, like Dante Hightower and Patrick Chung. So they're definitely going to help out that defense. Bring in Trent Brown to bolster that offensive line. They got some cap space to work with. Go out there, get some weapons, find a quarterback. Patriots could be right back there next year. So we will see what happens. But
as we've said, this is definitely going to be one of the most anticipated free agencies
100%.
that we can remember.
100%. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're actually going to talk about some hockey. ESPN agreeing to a deal with the NHL to broadcast some hockey games. Hockey's going to get some coverage on ESPN again, more extensive coverage, which I think is something that a lot of people will be looking forward to. So before we go to break, Ben is going to give us his Sports Minute. So stick around. We'll be right back here on Infinite Sports Radio. Ben, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kenny. It is exactly 8 o'clock. Look at that. Great segue. And here we go with your top of the hour sports update. In the midst of Champ Week, conference tournaments galore in college basketball. Tonight, 5 more NCAA tournament spots will be punched. Going on right now, the Colonial Championship, Drexel over Elon, 32-27 at the half. Just about to get underway in the second half on ESPN, the Horizon League Championship, Cleveland State 40, Oakland 28. And then on ESPN2, the Northeast Conference Tournament Championship game, Mount St. Mary's over Bryant, 34-29. And of course, later tonight, the number 1 team in the country, Gonzaga Bulldogs, in action against BYU in the West Coast Tournament Final at 9 o'clock on ESPN. And then Oral Roberts takes on North Dakota State in the Summit League final at 9 o'clock on ESPN2. In other sports leagues tonight, in the NHL, a full slate of games going on right now. Penguins over the Rangers 3-1. They're about to start this third period. Bruins lead the Islanders 1-0 at the end of 1. Sabres over the Flyers 3-1 through 2 periods. Capitals over the Devils 1-0 at the end of the first. Predators and the Hurricanes no score through the first. Panthers 1-0 over the Columbus Blue Jackets at the end of 2. Maple Leafs 2, Jets 1. They're in early second period action. And then the Red Wings, a shocker over the Lightning. Early, though, 1-0 halfway through the first period. And then later tonight, Blackhawks Stars at 8:30. You can catch that game on NBCSN. The NBA is off until tomorrow for the All-Star break. The All-Star game happens Sunday. But 2 games tomorrow, Wizards at the Grizzlies and the Spurs at the Mavericks. That game, 8:30, NBA TV tomorrow. As Kenny said, we'll be right back after the break for hour number 2 of Infinite Sports Radio.
All right, and we are back here on Infinite Sports Radio for hour number 2 of our radio program. So, big news today, right before we came in to do the show. ESPN agreed to a 7-year contract with the NHL, broadcasting contract. And, 7 years. They obtain the rights to do the Stanley Cup. So they will be one of the NHL media partners in the 2021-2022 season. That is when that'll start. Some streaming rights to Disney. This is actually a really great thing for ESPN. It really is. Kind of a side note, so I'm doing a project for one of my classes where I am a media consultant, and I had to pick a company that I would want to work for and try to help improve this company, and I chose ESPN because I think for ESPN's kind of taken a step back over the last, I don't know, decade, let's say, maybe a little less than that, but I think decade is a good time frame. A lot of people just are turned off by ESPN, and I think it's because of the fact that a lot of the content that they provide on their television programs it's a lot of just personalities yelling at each other and saying things that create controversy. And what I mean by that is, First Take back in the day when it was Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith, it was a unique show. It was a debate show. They debated about sports. And, whatever you want to say about Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith, that show was very successful in what it was trying to do. And now Skip Bayless kind of took that idea and brought it to Fox, FS1, where now he's doing Undisputed with Shannon Sharp. And First Take is still continuing with Stephen A. and Max Kellerman. But it seems like ESPN kind of took the idea of what First Take was and just kind of seemed to apply it to all their other shows, like Get Up and I don't know. Well, I don't really know the names of all their shows off the top of my head because, again, don't really, one of the reasons you really stop watching ESPN.
It's a bad lineup.
Yeah, it's just kind of the same things. It's just people, I don't want to say yelling at each other, but just, stirring up controversy and just getting people to say, well, that's a ridiculous statement. To kind of use a statement that a YouTuber that I watch said ESPN's kind of worried more about clicks and controversy than about authenticity. Because I think for the most part, I think people, First Take Undisputed, I think are still popular to certain people. For me, it kind of flamed out for me a couple years ago. I still will watch some of their segments from time to time, but not like what I used to. Because during high school, I used to, come home and, watch First Take because I would record it. Because, I thought Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless were a good duo. And, there was stuff that came out that ESPN was trying to lure Skip Bayless back to ESPN and do a show with Stephen A. Smith again. But that did not happen. Fox offered him more money. And he's staying with Fox. So, like I was saying with the authenticity, people want to just watch sports. And they just want to get updates on their sports teams. They want to just, sports news. That's what SportsCenter is for live sports. And in this project that I was doing, one of the things that I included in the plan to help ESPN improve itself was to get the rights to the NHL. And it's kind of funny because my professor was saying how, if sometimes that does happen, you do this project and your company ends up doing what you include in your plan. So you kind of just have to ignore that and just pretend like that didn't happen. So, of course, in my project, like I said, I included that that ESPN should get the rights to the NHL, be able to broadcast some hockey games. Because the contract, I believe, with NBC, the sports network, NBC Sports is that's going to not be a thing anymore, and games are going to be broadcasted on the USA Network. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a big problem for the NHL, because do you really want to have your product put on a secondary network? I don't think so. And understandably, NBC Sports Network, I think it's partially shutting down due to the pandemic, but also last summer, while all this was going on, NBC silently released Peacock. And ever since, I'd say, about Christmas time, around the holidays, it's really become a pretty big competitor in the streaming world. It really has. It's going right up there with HBO Max, Netflix, Hulu. It's definitely becoming a really attractive streaming service. And, of course, CBS and Viacom released Paramount Plus last week. So there's a lot of competition out there right now between streaming services. And with the NHL getting ESPN Plus, though, or getting on ESPN, I should say. I'm thinking of the streaming services. Although there definitely will be more games now, probably on ESPN Plus as a result. But instead of the NHL having their games taken away from a major network, ESPN is a household name. Like, people do think of NBC, of course, and NBC Sports Network, and that's fine. But nobody knows the USA Network for sports. No, absolutely not. I think, in general, I think we're going to see NASCAR move away from, NBC Sports for the second half of the season. I think we're going to see, and not like it's a big deal anyways, except someone like me, really, I guess. But, the Tour de France is going to move away, probably. There's so many different contracts that NBC Sports has that are going to want to move away, perhaps, just because they don't want to be thrown to a secondary network that nobody knows.
Yeah. I agree with that, because I believe there was a couple of games that were on the USA Network when they were in the bubble in the Stanley Cup. I believe they had one of them being broadcasted on that network. So I think this is a huge thing for ESPN.
Well, I was going to say though, Kenny, having like one or two games on USA Network, because what I like about NBC Sports is that their goal every playoffs is to broadcast every game. So it was a little bit more difficult, especially in the bubble this year, because you're having 4 or 5 games going on like back to back to back to back, like all day. So like any prior commitments that like NBC or NBCSN had, they just bumped one of the games over to USA Network just because their goal is to get every playoff game on some network. So
Yeah.
for like those special occasions, it's one thing. But season long, no way the NHL would go for that.
Yeah, definitely. But one of the things, though, ESPN is definitely going to have to do is bring in people that cover hockey. Because really, they only have a couple of people. They got Barry Melrose, who's been there forever, covering hockey. Hockey coverage is going to be big now. And I think that's something that a lot of people are looking forward to. And one of the things that the ESPN is definitely going to have to nail is getting the right people, getting in the right guys or people in general to come in and call the games and be good in color, being able to analyze the games. Because I think that's one of the big things that people pay attention to is who's broadcasting the game at that time. And it's kind of why, the Monday night broadcasts have been taking a lot of heat the past couple of years because they really haven't hit on them yet. I think Steve Levy, Louis Riddick, and Brian Greasy, they did a good job this past season. It was a tough spot, though, because they really didn't have a crowd to feed off of. There was a couple of times there was that crazy Ravens-Browns game that had a crowd, but they didn't have a crowd to really work with. But I don't really think they're memorable like Tirico was or when Al Michaels was doing Monday Night Football. So they got to hit on those. I think that's kind of the next step in this deal is they got to bring in the right people to broadcast the games and get people interested. But, I think this is a step in the right direction for ESPN. I really do. Like I said, this was in my plan for one of my class projects that, get some hockey coverage because you really don't have it. On all those shows, they don't really, other than Sports Center, they don't really cover hockey. It's like hockey's like nothing. But again, like I said, I think it's a step in the right direction for ESPN. And I think they're only going to improve from that. But I mean, think about it. They're getting the rights to the Stanley Cup. They only do the NBA Finals when it comes to, major championships. They do the NBA Finals. They do, the wild card round for the NFL. I mean, I remember the days where they didn't do any playoff games for the NFL. They didn't do any games for MLB either. I mean, you had ESPN Radio, but, you never really had ESPN broadcasting an NFL game. Never had it for baseball. In the past couple of years, you've seen them do the wild card games. But now, you're taking a major sport like hockey and being able to get the rights to the Stanley Cup. That's huge. And who knows? Maybe they'll take it a step further. I know they are also trying to get the rights to Sunday Night Football, I believe. Which, if they can get that, that would be huge. And I think ESPN should go a step further, try to get the rights to maybe do a Super Bowl. That's also in my plan. I think, if they can get the rights to doing the Super Bowl as well, I think you're going to start bringing back some people that turned off your network.
Yeah, seriously. And getting the Sunday Night Football package would be a huge step for, ESPN in getting that, a Super Bowl. because, NBC broadcasts Sunday Night Football right now. They get a Super Bowl. CBS, obviously one of the major, networks too. Same with Fox. It rotates on a 3-year basis. It's going to be difficult, to really, break up that rotation. I think the NFL, the way it is right now, I think it's always been, a 3-network rotation because before ABC lost, in 2006, ABC and ESPN merged. So anything that airs on ABC now is ESPN content. Like, it's produced by ESPN, directed by, it's got ESPN talent. It's all ESPN, but it's on ABC, which is the NBA Finals, for example. But just in general, if ESPN was able to land, a huge rights contract like that, and Sunday Night Football, no matter what anyone says, even though they have Monday night right now and Thursday night goes to Fox and NFL Network, Sunday night is the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
Always is, always will be. So if ESPN is able to really, get into that battle, they might, regain some of their composure as like a premier destination for more big-time events than what they've been used to broadcasting.
Yeah. And like I said, I think people are kind of tired of the same stuff. Just people just talking about sports and just making controversial statements just to get a buzz on social media. I think people are kind of getting a little tired of that. And they just kind of want more live sports and just more news on sports, just telling us what's going on rather than giving their opinion on what's going on. It's a step in the right direction. And, I think take it as maybe a step further and see if you can try to get the rights to Sunday Night Football and maybe, broadcast the Super Bowl. Because think about it. ESPN was regarded as the worldwide leader of sports. And I think how special it would be to be able to broadcast a Super Bowl on their network. I think they got to work on. Listen, like I said, I think the Monday Night Crew did a nice job, but I think they do got to get a better crew. I think they're still kind of experimenting. Because one point, the Monday Night Football crew was amazing. Tirico, Gruden, Jaworski, that was a good crew. And since then it's been Sean McDonough did a good job. Wasn't as energetic as Mike Tirico was. Also, he had that infamous voice crack in the wild card round when the Chiefs and the Titans were playing. It hasn't been the same since Tirico left. But it's crazy. There's a lot of moving parts, really, in the broadcasting industry. We don't know what's going to happen with Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth. There's a lot of buzz about Collinsworth and Al Michaels retiring, or when that'll happen.
Specifically, Chris Collinsworth. Al Michaels. I don't know about Chris Collinsworth necessarily, but you have a feeling if Al Michaels is going after Super Bowl 56 next year, there's a good guess that Chris Collinsworth would be leaving as well, because even though Tirico and Collinsworth have actually paired up for a couple games, like Steelers Ravens, for example, they do work well together, but I think Tirico might get a new color guy too. And perhaps maybe do you promote Liam McHugh or Jack Collinsworth up to that position? Now, actually, fun fact.
We also got to remember Drew Brees signed a contract with NBC Sports too.
Oh, yes, that's true. That's a good point. Can't forget about that. It seems like Drew Brees would be a better studio guy. But, fun fact, if you've been watching, Champ Week, college basketball tournaments, NBCSN actually has the rights to the Atlantic 10 tournament for the early rounds. So checking out, the quarterfinals on last Friday, flicked on the St. Bonaventura game for a while against, I think they were playing Dayton, if I remember correctly. It was either Dayton or VCU. But Jack Collinsworth was calling a couple of the games that day. And that was really the first time I'd heard him, do play-by-play. Now, obviously, from the sense that I got, basketball isn't his niche necessarily. but NBC doesn't cover basketball, really. It still amazes me how they have the rights to the Atlantic 10, but they're a primary carrier of that league specifically. So, but Jack Collinsworth, of course, does most of his work with Notre Dame football and Sunday Night Football, of course, this past year. Promoted to the fill-in sideline reporter when Liam McHugh was either doing hockey or he was off. So, Jack Collinsworth could definitely step up into that role too. But either way, it seems like it's going to happen. It would be a nice transition in some ways because, look, Al Michaels, he's getting near 80 years old. And unfortunately, he's not going to be able to keep going for forever. Nobody will. And in a matter of years, I think he might have considered retiring anyway. But I think NBC is going to just transition him and Chris out of the booth after what's really been a great, I think, 11 years together so far. And this year, I think, will be number 12, if I remember correctly, because John Madden was still with NBC with Al Michaels in Super Bowl 43. I think that was John Madden's last year. So, yeah, this would be year number 12 for Al and Chris. But, it's going to be sad either way because they're definitely two staples of, watching NFL football over the last decade. And if we're to lose that, and I mean, honestly, I love that NBC's been covering Sunday Night Football all these years because they have some really nice graphics updates that they've made in the last couple seasons. Their production team always puts 110% effort into the game because, again, the cream of the crop. There's a reason why I'm pretty sure now for 10 straight years that Sunday Night Football on NBC has been the number one program on television.
Yep.
Or at least on Sunday night. But I don't know about on television, but on Sunday nights at least. So,
yeah, they're a good duo to end off the whole day, the night that we spent 8 hours watching football.
Right, exactly.
They're the best duo to end off the night.
Yeah, and but just connecting it back to ESPN quickly again, Kenny. Just the fact that the NFL is really in a pretty big bidding war right now because all these networks, we saw it in the playoffs. I think CBS was trying to show that they care, about football. They want a lot of the contract. So I think by them putting a game on Nickelodeon, that's enticing the NFL to bring them back into the contract, as I'm sure they will be. Of course, NBC and ESPN battling for Sunday Night Football. We'll see who wins that battle. And then supposedly, I think there's been talks, too, of the NFL perhaps, moving more to, streaming platforms. I hear that they might start broadcasting some more games, on Twitch.
Like exclusively or just simulcast?
I think exclusively. But that's just rumors. Look, it's too early to jump to conclusions with that.
Yeah, I think that's more of something that could happen in the future.
Yeah,
I think
it's
this
too
was kind
early
of.
yet for that.
I think for a lot of different companies, this was kind of like the pandemic kind of offered a an experimental period. I will say, having games broadcasted exclusively on a streaming network, I think is kind of it kind of leaves some older viewers at a disadvantage. Because maybe some of these older viewers don't have these streaming platforms.
Right.
So now you're telling them now you have to go out and get a streaming platform so you're able to watch a certain game. Because, if it's your team, and you don't have the streaming platform, you're not going to be able to watch it.
Exactly. That's the problem. And it would be one of the sole reasons, I think.
Yeah, and it's kind of the same problem with, MLB, having games exclusively on YouTube. Now that you don't have to pay for YouTube, you could simply just look up the game on YouTube and be able to watch it. But some people might not be able to do that because some people don't have technology. Believe it or not.
Hard to believe, but yes, this is true.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to go there, but it's some people don't have a laptop. But I'm hoping they don't do that. I'm hoping, like, down the line, when streaming becomes, because streaming is like is exploding everywhere.
Oh, it's blowing up now.
I mean, there is a streaming service for everything now.
Especially with the pandemic, not just the entertainment industry as a whole, the sports industry, television deals. I mean, everything has taken such a huge hit, and I think that the pandemic is starting to almost accelerate the process. I'm not saying that television and cable television as we know it is going to die. I don't think it ever will, but it's in danger right now of being taken over by streaming services, because for yet another year, the Super Bowl ratings were down. The NBA Finals ratings were pretty far down. The Stanley Cup Final ratings were atrocious this past year. And it just seems that with the pandemic, we've seen Peacock starting to build up into a big, they're starting to add a lot of live sports to their library of streaming shows, movies, everything. And also with, Paramount Plus now coming out, CBS is going to start putting, beginning actually already. They had their triple headers on Paramount Plus streaming this past weekend along with CBS. They're going to have the selection show, March Madness, SEC football games in the fall. They're going to have all that streaming on Paramount Plus as well. So if you're not subscribed to a cable television plan, and if you don't have CBS, Paramount Plus might be the way to go for you, for looking for live sports content. And like I said with Peacock, they now hold rights to the UEFA Champions League. Or no, excuse me, that's CBS Sports. That's on Paramount Plus too, actually. But no, Peacock has the what is the league? Oh, the Premier League. I blanked there for a second. I can't remember. I couldn't remember it. Yeah, they hold rights to the Premier League. They're getting a lot of IndyCar coverage now on there. The Olympics later this summer. There's supposed to be some events streaming exclusively on there too. Kenny, we are entering a digital age. And like I said, even though I don't think, cable television is going to die out, obviously, you're still going to see, the championship events on the major networks, of course, because that's what'll draw in the biggest audience. It's accessible for everyone, basically. You never want to miss out on the championship series for any of the major sports. So, but the rise of streaming services has really made its impact now, especially with the pandemic. And going forward, I'm curious to see what's going to happen when we come around now with the next TV deals. Because the NFL is due up, I think, in a couple of years. The NHL, as we know, already has a deal with ESPN now, as of today, which is amazing news for that network. And then the NBA, I'm pretty sure they have a little while to go still. But they have a huge contract with TNT, ESPN, ABC, NBA TV, all those networks. So it'll be interesting to see where the leagues start going. Will there be more exclusive streaming-only games? That remains to be seen.
Yeah, we're going to definitely see a lot of change within the next 10, 15 years, probably.
Absolutely.
So it's always a changing industry. So, but last final thoughts with ESPN. Good for them with this deal. I think this is definitely a major step in the right direction to kind of recapture what being the worldwide leader of sports is. And adding hockey, you're definitely going to bring in a lot of viewers.
Yeah, and I think now what the potential schedule will be for them in the winter. Monday and Tuesday nights usually are college basketball nights. Wednesday and Friday are the NBA nights. So I'm thinking that Thursdays and Sundays that ESPN will cram in NHL games, especially Sundays, because sports lineups are pretty dead on Sunday nights. So bringing an NHL game on ESPN Sunday night would be a nice boost, because it'd be something, to check out. And obviously, Kenny, they're still going to split the rights with NBC Sports, which look, it makes sense because NBC Sports, they do have good coverage. They just don't do enough. I think that's their problem. And like I said, the NHL didn't want most of their games getting bumped to a secondary network that not a lot of people know. So now that it's on a household name network that most people have access to, I think that this is a great advancement for the NHL, and I think it's going to improve viewership for sure. And it's going to allow more of an avenue for people to check out hockey on a weekly basis.
Yeah, definitely. ESPN is coming back. At least that's what we hope for the benefits of them. So, kind of moving on to a completely different topic. It involves our baseball team, the New York Yankees. Here we go. That's all I have to say. So, Zach Britton, their setup man, to Aroldis Chapman in the bullpen, one of their better arms, underwent elbow surgery to remove a bone chip. He was experiencing soreness in his elbow on Monday. Had an MRI on Monday. Gio Urshela, the third baseman, had a similar surgery, and he only just came back and returned to baseball activities from that surgery. He had that surgery in the offseason. This is something that could sideline Britton for several months. He's going to be shut down for 6 to 8 weeks, and it says here in the Post, the New York Post, he likely won't be back until mid-June at the earliest. Like I just said, here we go. That's one of the things with the Yankees is, it's just become a common theme now where we're crossing our fingers every year. Every time the season starts up, a new season starts up, we're crossing our fingers and hoping that nobody gets injured and we have a season where everybody's relatively healthy. And the first domino has fallen. Zach Britton. This is a huge loss for the Yankees. They brought Britton back. Obviously hasn't been the Zach Britton that he was with the Baltimore Orioles, where he was unhittable, but has been productive as a Yankee. But now this is just, again, unfortunately, another next man up mentality. Guys are going to have to step up. Chad Green, I anticipate that he's going to be the guy that slides into that setup man role. And they're just going to have to see what other guys do in spring training down the stretch to see who's going to fill out the roster spots when it comes to the bullpen. So it's just pathetic that, this team just always has to have somebody get injured. The season hasn't even started yet, and we're already talking about injuries. It seems like we're heading down that same road again. Now, thankfully, this is the only major injury that we've had to deal with. The good thing is he is supposed to come back, and it says mid-June at the earliest, which I think is around the time Luis Severino is supposed to come back as well. But again, this really is a huge blow to the Yankees bullpen. So, hope he has a speedy recovery. Hopefully he's healthy, and he's ready to go when he's ready to come back. But you know what? Let's kind of, let's get away from all the negative stuff here. Kind of somebody that you got to be a little bit positive for, though it's a small sample size. And, we know how we've seen situations where guys have a good spring training and then they completely fall off in the regular season. But try to be positive here. Gary Sanchez is batting .364 this spring, 3 RBIs, and all 3 of those RBIs are 3 solo home runs. Now, only 11 at-bats. It's the spring. But considering what Gary Sanchez has done the last couple of years, we'll take anything. And last spring, though it was only 9 games, he was batting .087. So, what does this mean? 3 home runs in 11 at-bats, batting .364. It doesn't mean anything, okay? But in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't mean anything, but this can give him some confidence going into the regular season. And maybe Gary Sanchez will be more productive and not batting under 200. And I really hope so, because, listen, this is it for him. I think I've said this already a couple times, but this is it for him. If he does not produce this season, he's going to be gone. He's going to be gone. And I think the Yankees are going to go into a different direction. And I think you kind of saw a glimpse of that when Kyle Higashioka was playing more in the playoffs than Gary Sanchez was.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a sign of, maybe the Yankees do want to move on from Gary Sanchez. And, in general, he hasn't, in my opinion, lived up to, expectations some seasons, for sure. It's been disappointing. It really has. And obviously, he's had to deal with, some things. But, in general, just, looking at his overall numbers, and he's a 2-time All-Star. Most recently, 2019. And in 2019, he actually had a decent season. 2017 was probably his best season when he played 122 games. Bat .278, and he had 33 homers, 90 RBIs. And some similar numbers in 2019 as well. 106 games, 34 homers, 77 RBIs. He bat .232. Those are definitely his 2 best seasons as a Yankee, but last year, 49 games. Of course, this was a 60-game season, plus the playoffs for the Yankees. Was not producing last season at all, whatsoever. 147 with just 10 homers, 24 RBIs. And that isn't going to cut it for, Gary Sanchez right now. It's not. And for the Yankees as a whole. So they really need to, reevaluate the catcher position here. It's definitely something that they have to really think about going forward. Without a doubt.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing here, you sound like a broken record, is you got to stay healthy. And, so far so good. I'm anticipating a good season from Gleyber Torres. If Judge stays healthy, I am anticipating he will have a really good season. One of the more intriguing things is the Yankees rotation. I'm getting really excited about this Yankees rotation.
Me too. It's got a lot of promise.
It's got a lot of promise. There really hasn't been. I don't think there really has been one guy in the rotation or at least that's fighting for a rotation spot. That's really had a bad outing. I think Michael King started a game and he had a bad outing, but I don't think he's going to be in the rotation. Corey Kluber's looked good. Jameson Taillon that they got from the Pirates has looked good. Domingo Germán looked good. Even Jordan Montgomery looked good in their starts. Listen, this rotation, if everything is hitting on all cylinders, can be one of the best rotations in baseball. And they're only going to get better when Luis Severino eventually comes back in June, which I think is around that. I think that's when he's supposedly going to come back, is in June. And Luis Severino, before he was injured, was a Cy Young candidate. So now you bring him in. It's essentially like getting a guy from the trade deadline you bring Severino back. You get Severino back, sorry. Garrett Cole, Corey Kluber, Jameson Taillon. Personally, for me, I think Domingo Germán gets that 5th spot. I think Germán, as of right, Severino's not coming back for a while. I think Germán gets that spot. So right now you'd have Cole, Taillon, Kluber, Germán. And I guess for the time being, Jordan Montgomery is your number 5 starter. So I think Germán and Montgomery get those 2 spots. Obviously, Montgomery and Germán are two very different pitchers and are in 2 very different situations. Obviously, with all the things that went on with Domingo Germán with the domestic violence and suspension. Obviously, Jordan Montgomery had to go through Tommy John surgery, so he was out for a couple years. Came back last year. So, missed all of 2018. I think he missed all of 2018. I want to say, came back towards the end of 2019. Started in the playoffs against the Rays. Came up big in Game 4 in the division series versus the Rays. Has looked pretty good from what I've seen. Is definitely not a flamethrower. Definitely is more of like an Andy Pettitte. In Andy Pettitte's second half of the season, or second half of his career. So, you know what? The Yankees on paper look like the best team in the American League. Now, do I want to say the best team in baseball? Absolutely not, because there's a team out in LA that just won the championship last year, and I'll have something to say about that. Though, for me, I'm kind of optimistic. If the Yankees and the Dodgers did meet in the World Series, I'm optimistic that we can hang with them. I really do. I go back to 2019 when the Yankees won 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers. The game that they lost, it was 2-1. It was a close game, and it came down to a controversial call at the end of the game where I think they scored the tying run, but then they got I don't know. I don't remember the exact specifics of that incident, but if something with the Yankees tied the game, and then the runner had to go back to I don't remember what it was. But, the Yankees were able to hang with the Dodgers. And, I think if this rotation can be, have no setbacks, guys play at the levels that they're capable of playing at, listen, I would love to match up the Yankees' top 5 when they're healthy against the Dodgers' top 5. Garrett Cole, Corey Kluber, Luis Severino, Domingo Germán, Jameson Taillon. Then on the other side, you'd have Kershaw, Walker Buehler, David Price, Dustin May, and I forgot Trevor Bauer in between that. So, and if the lineup's healthy, I think you still give the edge to the Dodgers, but Yankees got a really good lineup. And I think the Yankees have the edge when it comes to bullpen. So I think a lot of people are going to say the Yankees and the Dodgers are going to meet in the World Series, and I feel like that's the same thing every year. And then it doesn't end up happening. But we'll see. We will see what happens. But I got to tell you, I'm really excited about this Yankees rotation and what it has the potential to be.
Yeah, and there's, I think, a lot of hope and optimism going into this season that this should be the year that the Yankees can, finally do it. And while it maybe feels like this has to be the year, I think it does in some ways, because you just look at the last 4 seasons as a whole for the Yankees, 2 championship series appearances and then 2 division series. No World Series appearances since 2009 when they last won it. And right now it just feels like they really have to, go out there and meet up with potentially the Dodgers in the World Series, Kenny, because I don't know about you as a fan. It's just been somewhat disheartening because the year after year you keep getting disappointed, and that this is going to be our year. It's going to work out, and then it doesn't, and it just hurts sometimes. It does. But that's the game of baseball. It is a season-long grind that takes a mental and physical toll on your body. It really does. But that's what makes the game interesting. It's about how these teams perform over a season-long span. And it's not about, making a small run or going on a big losing streak. What matters is how you do on the whole season. So, but yeah, we shall see what happens. Like I said, I think the Yankees end up with a 97-65 record by the end of the season. I think they're capable of that. They have the pieces in place. I think they can do it.
Yeah, I think so too. I think they will win the division this year. I think that last year a lot of things didn't go right for them. When it came to injuries, of course, I'm just hoping we don't have another 2019 situation where the whole roster's injured and we're in May. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. So I know you wanted to take the last couple minutes we had left in the show to kind of talk about college basketball because, you're more of a fanatic than I am. You're watching literally every conference tournament. One thing I want to say, Quinnipiac lost 72-48 to Iona.
Yikes.
To be eliminated. That is ridiculous. We were watching the game. It was almost 5 minutes into the game, and it was only 7-5, 5-3, whatever it was. They got outscored 47-28 in the second half. That's terrible. So another depressing year for Quinnipiac men's basketball. But hey, you know what? We're coming up to March Madness, and let me tell you something. Doing a bracket is a lot of fun. That's when I get really invested, is when I do a bracket. And, some of these games are just, they're going 100 every single time. And that's why, when it comes to college, you got to say in terms of the quality of play, and the speed of the game, you got to say college sports is maybe a little bit better than professional because, those kids are playing to get to the major leagues. And, when you're watching like an NBA game, you see guys bringing it up the court and they're basically strolling up to the other side of the court. In college basketball, they're running back and forth constantly. Yeah, they slow it down, to change the pace of the game sometimes. But, when it's an intense game in some of these tournaments, especially in March Madness, they're sprinting up and down the field constantly. So I'm really excited for this tournament. We got robbed of it last year because of everything going on, and this is basically the 1 year anniversary of what was it, yesterday or today when Rudy Gobert was touching the microphones at the press conference?
Today, 1 year ago today.
Yeah, that's just
unreal.
That's unbelievable. That is unbelievable that was a year ago today. But thankfully, we're at school. We're not on spring break. I shouldn't say that. Thankfully that we're back and we're not at home and everything is not shut down as of right now. Things are starting to open back up. A couple of things I saw, stadiums. Apparently, Maryland is easing their restrictions, so I think Camden Yards can open up to like 50% capacity or something. So, and then you see, the CDC updating their guidelines saying if you're fully vaccinated, you can gather indoors without social distancing and no masking. So, we're starting to get to that point where we're not going to be doing this for much longer. Cross your fingers, knock on wood.
Thank goodness for that.
Yeah. Because we're tired of it. And, I had a couple of family members get their vaccines over the past couple of days. So we're heading in the right direction. And I think the worst is behind us. So we're getting stuff that we didn't get last year. We're getting them this year. And March Madness is one of them. And I could not be more excited for what we are about to see in this tournament coming up next week.
And right now, Cleveland State defeats Oakland 80-69. They are the Horizon League champions. And for the last couple of minutes, let's just run through now what we've got so far in Champ Week. And like I said, just add that to the list. Cleveland State now the Horizon League champions. And we have 4 more games that are going to be decided tonight. 4 more spots to the NCAA tournament. So hats off to the Cleveland State Vikings winning the Horizon League. Already, we know that on Sunday, Winthrop clinched the Big South. Liberty clinched the Atlantic Sun. Loyola Chicago, welcome back to the tournament. Ramblers, they clinched the Missouri Valley. Morehead State started off Saturday. They clinched the Ohio Valley over Belmont. Monday night in the SoCon, it was UNC Greensboro taking the bid. And in the, what's the other league that I'm thinking of? I can't find it. I guess maybe there was only were there 2 spots clinched last night? I don't know. I think last night was only UNC Greensboro. And also the Colonial Championship just went final too.
Well, Gonzaga clinched, right?
They play the West Coast Championship coming up 9:00 on ESPN against BYU.
I think we should anticipate that they're gonna wrap it up.
Yeah, they're gonna clinch the West Coast, I think for sure. What a miracle run by the Elon Phoenix. They just that game just went final. They lose to Drexel 63-58 in the Colonial. So now the Drexel Dragons are the Colonial Athletic Champions. Good for them. They're the number 6 seed in that tournament. So they are stealing the auto bid there out of the Colonial for sure. In the Northeast Conference, St. Mary's leads 65-58 over Bryant with 2:17 left. We can't call that final yet. That's too early. But as of right now, Mount St. Mary's is looking to take the NEC bid to the tournament. Also, ACC tournament first round began tonight. MAC tournament first round action as well. A lot of the big power conference tournaments start tomorrow, including the Big 12, Big 10, SEC, and Pac-12. And now, before we go off the air, wanted to get these picks out with enough time. So for the Power 6 conferences out there, I got my picks ready here. So for the Big 10, it is wide open. 5 or 6 teams could easily win this thing. But I'm going to take Illinois. They proved something in that huge road win at Michigan. Kofi Cockburn, Ayo Dosunmu, hopefully he's back and healthy. He should be. The Fighting Illini are a special team this year. I think they can get it done in the Big 10 with Michigan, Iowa, and the rest of the big boys in that conference. The Big 12, I got Baylor. You know, it's like Dickie V said the other night against Texas Tech when they were playing their final regular season game. It seems like that long COVID pause that Baylor had really altered their rhythm. And I think they're back to their winning ways now. I think that one loss they had to Kansas was just a little blip in what's been one heck of a season. I'm going to take Baylor for the Big 12. In the ACC, you know what? A lot of pressure's on Duke, of course. Duke is trying to make a miraculous run and showed to the committee that they belong in the NCAA tournament. It's going to be rough, though. That's one of the big storylines in the ACC. But I'm going to take Florida State. You know, I know Virginia, a lot of people, overlook them. But I think they're a little bit of an overrated team this year. Kihei Clark and Sam Hauser have been pretty good players for them. But I think Florida State and Leonard Hamilton have the better squad, and I think they get it done in this ACC tourney. The SEC, I like Arkansas. They are a hot basketball team right now. And who says that they can't beat Alabama right now? Again, they just played them 2-3 weeks ago, beat them by, I think, 12 or 14 points. Arkansas's got a nice team, and watch out for them come tournament time. In the Big East, the door is open now with Colin Gillespie out for the season for Villanova. I like Creighton, though, as a UConn Husky fan, too. I think they lose to them in the final. But I'm pulling for the Huskies, but I will take Creighton to get it done in the Big East. And then the Pac-12, oh, my goodness. This conference is so tough to pick, too, with UCLA, Colorado, and Oregon all at the top, too. I think USC isn't getting talked about as much right now, probably because of that little skid that they went on. They were in the top 20. Now they're ranked 24th this week. So I think they get it done, the Pac-12. Champ Week is really going to get wild, folks, beginning tomorrow with all the big power conferences in action. So one more time. Big 10, Illinois. Big 12, Baylor. ACC, Florida State. SEC, Arkansas. Big East, Creighton. Pac-12, USC. Those are my power conference picks. Let's unleash the bracket on Sunday. I'm ready to pick games. March Madness, baby. We back. Woo!
That was some kind of echo there.
Yeah, I think I just blew the mic.
Yeah.
Kidding.
Yeah, no, it should be a great tournament. Really looking forward to it. It all starts next week. So can't get here any faster. So with that is all the time we have for tonight. If you stuck with us for the full 2 hours, we greatly appreciate it. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. And as always, I'm Kenneth Gruenfelder, along with the great Ben Upson, saying have a good night, and we'll see you next time.
Enjoy Champ Week Selection Show, Sunday, 6 p.m., CBS Infinite Sports Radio. We out!